Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1262 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Wednesday evening into Thursday. And today's show is sponsored by Arcade One Up. Locked On is partnering with Arcade One Up to give away 3 free NBA JAM Shaq machines. Stay tuned later in the show to learn how to enter to win one of those consoles. And as a reminder, this is part 2 of 2 with myself and Brian Schroeder talking about the NBA draft. So if you missed part 1, I definitely recommend going back to the beginning of that conversation. It should be available for you right now on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or YouTube, Stitcher, etc. But thank you for listening to the podcast as always. This is part 2. Just want to say that at the top of the podcast, so there's no confusion, and the NBA draft conversation rolls along in full. One more note here before we get to the part 2 of the conversation is that we talked about this stuff about a week ago. Myself and Brian, I was trying to hold it a little bit, but the withdrawal deadline passed, and one of the players that we discussed in part 2, Leonard Miller, actually pulled out of the draft. Now it's only a brief conversation about Leonard Miller, but I don't want you to be too confused about that. And it won't hurt you too badly, but I wanted to cut around it. Couldn't quite figure out how to do that. So keep that in mind. Leonard Miller no longer is available in this class. He'll be in the G League United, it looks like, for next season. So he'll be in the 23 draft. Pretty interesting guy. So it won't hurt you to learn about him a little bit. But I just wanted to put that out there before we listen to the rest of the podcast. Okay, the intro will roll now. We'll talk with myself and Brian, part 2 on the NBA draft.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I want to ask you a question that you probably remember me asking you in the past, and I think it'll be a good way to get into some guys who you would really like for the Hawks at 16. Who are your guys in this class, Brian? Do you have guys? You always have guys. So
apparently, Tari Eason is my guy because if I think he should be picked in the first round, I'm hyping too much praise on a guy who had a 4.6 steal rate at 6'8".
Wait, is there an anti-Tari Eason thing now?
Oh, that he's not interviewed well apparently. So now
I saw that
he's falling for no particular reason. He's falling because he didn't wear a suit and say yes sir enough to some credulous. Some credulous executives.
By the way, I know you like him, and let's talk about him for a second, because I feel like I know I have already picked him as the Hawks in a mock draft, and I'll probably do it again at some point in the future. He's a very popular pick. What do you make of Tari Eason? Obviously, I know because I've seen your stuff that you have him as a lottery pick, right? Something like that.
Tari Eason is a dangerously intense basketball player. Like, that's the best way to describe him.
You love that, by the way. I know you.
Yeah, he will go chest to chest with anyone who steps up to him. He will put you in the dirt. I remember a sequence against Alabama where he knocked down 4 of their players in like a 12-second period, and they were all like laying there after the play. Like, one guy had blood in his mouth, and you don't want a guy out there hurting people. But Tari is just like crazy. Tari, he didn't start, which I'm surprised I haven't seen that used as a negative against him. I think the biggest reason he didn't start was Will Wade wanted a 7-footer out there, so they put Effin Reed, who's a stiff, and then Darius Days was like a 6th-year guy, and he's been there forever. You're going to start that guy. The other reason, though, and Will Wade actually said this, the other reason he wasn't starting was because they were worried he would play too hard at the tip, like he would burn himself out because he plays so hard.
He does fly around.
Really a hustle merchant, but that's not a bad thing. But the thing with him is the idea that he's I'm not saying he's like Draymond Green out there, but the idea that he has like low basketball IQ, which is a loaded phrase.
Sure.
But he can't read defenses and he can't make plays. That team had maybe the worst guard play in any power conference team. He was the best passer on the team. He was the best driver on the team. He was the best ball handler on the team. Well, Eric Gaines is a good ball handler. He just is crazy. But they couldn't shoot. They had one guy who was a shooter, maybe 2, Brandon Murray. So he would kick the ball out to somebody who would dribble in place for 14 seconds and then throw the ball back to him. So a lot of it was just Tari having to charge into the lane and try and hit a floater. He's a little too right-hand dominant. That's an issue. Like, he doesn't. When a guy is driving on the left side of the rim and tries to do this stuff and scoop under, that's right-hand dominant. You just need to use your left hand. Not even to control the ball, that's a bad sign. But LSU played a very aggressive defense, so I can buy that his steals numbers would be popped up a little bit. Not that he had a 4.6 steal rate. That's crazy. That's like Keegan Murray is rightly looked at as like a guy who could really play defense and play in the passing lanes and push people around. He had a 2.3 steal rate. That's a very good, strong steal rate. Tarius was literally twice that. It's crazy. That's a crazy steal rate number for a guy of that size. And he had a crazy block. He had like a 6 block rate, which is pretty good for like a guy who's not playing in the paint all the time.
Not a center, yeah.
Yeah, and that's us backed up in he tested like almost identical to OG Anunoby physically. Like he had good shuttle, like all his athletic stuff was good. So it's like I get that concerns about like his work ethic. Well, I guess not his work ethic, but like his ability to read the court and maybe some stuff, maybe some off the court stuff. I don't actually know anything about that specifically. I can understand those being reasons to push him out of like the top 12. Maybe you don't take him lottery. Maybe he falls back in like late teens.
16,
maybe he falls,
for instance.
Maybe he falls to, let's say, pick number 18 for no particular reason. But these are not reasons to be like Tariq in danger of falling out of the first round. Like, no, come on. Kendall Brown is falling out of the first round because he doesn't look to score. He's not a scorer in any way.
No, it's start with Kendall Brown. Like, not to go off on a Kendall Brown rant, but like, if you watch Baylor, Kendall Brown doesn't even look at the rim. Like he doesn't even pretend to try to score. And I'm not someone that like super values scoring a ball above all else, but like it is so obvious when you watch Baylor, like he doesn't even think about it. Which is not.
You can't be playing 4-on-5 on offense.
No, I mean, and Tari's not going to do that. I mean, Tari averaged 17 points a game off the bench
per 36. His scoring numbers were, I think they're the second. I can look it up right now. He was right behind Keegan.
He was efficient too. I mean, we talked. There isn't a whole lot of discussion about his offense for the most part. I feel like most people that just talk about the draft at the highest level talk about maybe his like free throw rate and his steals and blocks and his aggressiveness.
Yeah, he's third in my database, and he's only third because Peter Kiss from Brian is second. So yeah, Keegan at 26.5 and Tari at 24.9 points per 36.
So. You talk about his defense a little bit. What do you make of his offense? Because like I sort of teased a second ago, he got to the line a ton.
Yeah,
and he shot like 56% from 2. Like he was efficient. He shot the ball okay from 3, like mid 30s. Is he going to be someone that's obviously he's not a non-threat, but like what is his, let's say 3 years from now, what's his offense look like?
Well, the key with Tari is that he's not going to be passive out there. Like I don't know what kind of use he'll be. He'll probably be a corner 3-point shooter at best, but like Dorian Finney-Smith was a non-shooter and became one. Like, it's not hard to teach guys how to shoot spot-ups. NBA people will tell you that all the time. That and adding 10, 15 pounds are the two easy. That's a thing they can do with basically any player. Like, it's not. That's what they are paid to do. It's how they develop people. It's like the two easiest things in the world to do. But Tari, I think the issue, because I said you can't play 4-on-5 on offense unless you have Steph Curry and you're playing in the NBA Finals, and you have Draymond out there. Even though the other team is literally ignoring him, you still score, which is crazy.
It is.
But Tari. The thing with Tari is if people sag off of him, he's going to take 3 steps, and he's going to be the paint. He's going to dunk. Like he's just, if you play off him, he's going to be insulted, and he's going to do something. Either he's drawing a charge. Or either he's committing a charge, or he's drawing a blocking foul, or he's kicking off to somebody. Like, that's just not a guy who's going to sit around out there and do nothing. And you get a lot of putbacks, a lot of just big rebounds. I just think, like, the guy he really kind of reminds me of physically in the way he plays, but he's just, like, ramped way up is Paul Reed. Paul Reed, like, with this cranked up to 11. Like, he's just going full blast all the time, which makes Tari maybe not a guy you draft to be a starter. And like I said, I have him 8, but that's more just like of that second group. And that second group for me goes all the way into the 20s.
And that's what I'm saying at the top, by the way.
Yeah.
Like that, if your entire tier goes from 8 to like mid 20s, that tells you how kind of flat maybe is the wrong word, but it tells you how big this group is. That like
it's flat. It's not a lot of outliers. And the reason I haven't made it is because he's got the most outliers. Like this, the hand size, absolutely gigantic hands, the ability to read off ball steals, the ability to play the baseline, driving kick stuff, finishing, transition stuff, just like psychotic. Psychotic is the wrong word. Just like super intense competitiveness.
Yeah.
I have him there, and I really don't understand why he'd fall out of the teens. Like.
Oh, yeah. I think that, not that the Hawks just absolutely have to take the guy, but I think at 16, he's on my list of this is a good outcome for the Hawks picks at 16. Like, I have a few guys that I think are like good outcomes, and I have like a bunch more that are just like, okay, I get it, kind of things. He's a step below the okay, I get it, guys. I think that'd be a genuinely positive takeaway from the night if I'm the Hawks, is getting him at 16. And I mean, you made the Anunoby comp. Obviously, it's just like, player comps are what they are, but like OG goes in the top 10, if not for the knee injury, probably coming out of college. And we've seen what he's. I mean, and now every team in the league wants OG Anunoby. They're not exactly the same player, but like everyone is like, that guy's awesome. So kind of tells you what it could be.
Guy dominates with physicality and just plays super hard. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's some Jeremy Grant outcomes in there for him.
Another guy who everybody seems to want right now. And even if you think like Jeremy Grant's, I think Jeremy Grant's like a touch overrated. And even then, like he's going to make $25 million a year.
Well, at some point, he's going to get traded back to a team where he's like the second or third option. He's going to be awesome.
That would help him. Yes. Exactly.
He's going to be awesome. I mean, he's technically the second option now. That took a little while this year. But yeah, like he's going to go back to somewhere where he's the second or third guy. He's the guy who gets the pass when the defense is in rotation. And good luck. That's the Jeremy Grant. Like, that's the thing. That's why Jaylen Brown's been so effective, is he's not a number one scorer. But if you play him with a number one scorer, there's at least once every 3 or 4 games, he's just going to catch people on the back foot and he's gone. Like, there's nothing you can do. And that's that kind of guy, like the 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", 6'9" guys who have the athleticism to attack closeouts, really attack closeouts, run on the break, finish above the rim. It took Miles Bridges a little while, but Miles Bridges has become that guy. He's going to make $100 million. Like, I don't know if Tari is as good as any of these guys, but the methodology is what I don't get. Too many people do the big board. They don't have like anything in particular they value other than just like was productive in college, which Tari was. So it's like, yeah, I don't understand. I don't get where Keegan can be 4th and Tari Eason can be 28th. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm perfectly fine if someone prefers Keegan. They're similar players. They have similar production. Keegan's just probably a little calmer, a little more polished, probably has more potential as a shooter and a scorer, and still has like good measurables, and it will be pretty good at defense. And it's probably more dependable, where Atari is kind of an outlier, like a really volatile. Some days you may not get him at his best, but so like if Keegan is you're taking Keegan at like 6 or 7, and you don't want to take Atari, that makes sense to me, but. Just the idea that in a vacuum there are 30 or so better prospects in this draft. There's not. There just aren't.
Today's show is brought to you by Built Bar, and our friends over at Built are always coming out with amazing new flavors, and this time they've actually outdone themselves with the new Mud Pie flavor. For the first time ever, Built is also introducing the Mud Pie flavor in both Mud Pie Bar and Mud Pie Puff. If you're not sure what the Mud Pie tastes like, you'll definitely like it if you're a fan of chocolate. The new bar is rich whipped cream and chocolate mousse smothered in 100% real chocolate topped with a cookies and cream crumble. It is fantastic, and you have tried as much and as soon as possible. You need to hurry up as well, because the Mud Pie Bar and Mud Pie Puff are only available for a limited time for Built Bar. And Built.com has all the deliciousness that you need in one place. Taste it all for yourself and order today. If you're not convinced, luckily we saved the best stuff for last year. It's actually good for you as well. No, really, it actually is. Built products are all low calorie, high protein, and low sugar. This time around, Mud Pie has 16 grams of protein, 150 calories, only 8 grams of sugar. It's like the mom in your life baking the most deliciously creamy chocolate mud pie and wrapping it up just for you in a healthy package on top of everything else. And what's great about Built Bar is they have collagen protein, which makes it actually more easy to absorb all of the stuff that you need in your body, and that provides a ton of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good, and it's actually good for you at the same time. You'll absolutely love the Mud Pie Built Bar and the Built Puff, whether you need a snack for your workout, a late night treat, or just to grab a quick bite. Built is the perfect protein bar, and they have all the taste that you want, and it's much better for you than a candy bar. Stop drooling now. Built.com has all the answers for you for Mud Pie bars and puffs and much more. You won't regret it. And if you go to Built.com right now, use the promo code LOCK15, 15% off on your order with Built Bar. One more time, it is Built.com, promo code LOCK15, 15% off at Built.com. I want to get your thoughts on actually 3 guys who are non-college, and this is where I lean on your expertise as someone that I trust to have watched these guys more than everybody else has. Well, yeah, more than most people have in the world, let's just say. These guys, I'll just lay them out in no order. Nikola Jovic, Ousmane Dieng, and Leonard Miller are guys that like most people who listen to this podcast have never seen, or maybe have seen once. And I wonder,
they're a group of 3 for me. They're kind of their own subgroup because they're all the same.
Well, good
to me. Yeah.
That makes it even more interesting because I want you to kind of tell me what you think about the Hawks in general with those three guys, because generally speaking, like the questions I get about guys are about guys that people have seen that play college basketball. I'm sure you're not surprised by that. So like these three, Miller is generally seen as a little bit lower on like most mainstream boards, but he's definitely a mystery guy in this class. And then you see Jovic and you see Jang as like top 20 guys for a lot of people. So do you like those guys in the mid first round?
Sure.
Do you like what do you actually see from them? Like, are they actual candidates for the Hawks? Like, I guess give me the rundown on the three.
I think that they'll be an interesting idea for the Hawks because they all have guard abilities, but at 6'10" plus, which is interesting. And that's just not a player you still don't find those guys around that often. I mean, Pokusevski had one of the worst rookie seasons in NBA history, and it's already improved to the point where he's going to get a second contract. Like he's not going to wash out of the league already.
Yeah, you would think so for sure.
Like he played pretty well the last 3 or 4 weeks. He played well enough to be shut down by the Thunder.
And he's still what, like 20?
20, yeah. He's not even 20. He doesn't turn 21 until after Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy in itself. But.
Yeah. So like, those guys do not grow on trees. I like Miller the most, but it's all degrees. I think Miller just has the weirdest game. I think that might be what it is. Miller has the Canadian, the Steve Nash layups and the weird, gets really low on his, for 6'11" guy, he gets crazy low, like gets his shoulders at people's hip level to drive past them, which really helps because he's not super bursty. Although he tested pretty well, like vertical, like okay, like not bad. But he just has he has the most things to fix, I feel like he has touch. He has crazy touch. He has Luka Doncic, 19-foot floater on the run touch, but maybe some of the worst preparation as a shooter I've ever seen. He splays his legs out all the time when he shoots for no real reason. So, he's had some 5 of 16 3-point shooting games, or 1 of 10, but then he'll have a 4 of 4 game when he's more in control. And he just runs around. He's like a stuff magnet, the same way that Minot kind of is. Giddey was this guy last year for me, where it's just he always seems to be, whenever there's something happening, he always seems to be around it. Just kind of finds his way to the ball, finds his way to whatever's going on. I think Miller can run little hang pick and rolls, especially in the secondary. If you hit him on the kick him back out and set a secondary, maybe a side pick and roll, he can take two dribbles, get a foot into the paint, and then just throw the lob real quick. He's really good at that. His defense is fine. I don't know. It's hard to be a 6'11", 215 guy who runs pretty well and not be good. He just has some stuff to clean up, but he is the youngest guy in the draft. If he's in this draft, if he doesn't go to the Ignite, which I don't know if he will, he's about 8 days younger than Jalen Duren, so he's the youngest player in the draft. Just around Thanksgiving birthday, so the 26th. I don't know if that's Thanksgiving this year, but whatever.
Something like that, yeah.
And Jovic, I think, is more kind of easier to define because he's just a straight up, he doesn't play defense at all, but he's just...
Well, the Gallo comps have been out there for Jovic, which Hawks fans would understand a little bit. Yeah,
I kind of like a Kuzma comp too. Although Kuzma's become more of a defender, but that's kind of the idea of especially when Kuzma came in with the Lakers and he was bombing threes. It's kind of a matchup guy. He's a 6'10" guy who can dribble into a pull up, and that's hard to defend. Super nifty passer, really good passer. Just kind of really works as an offensive engine. At least at the underlying teams, he was pretty great. I think he was the second best player in the entire competition, which means he was the best mortal player because that was the competition that Wembanyama was at.
Wemby.
So he doesn't count. But Jovic is really interesting. I just think you're not getting a defensive player, that you're getting a guy who's going to take a couple years, but he has real scoring skill. Jang, I'm less into than the other three, but I still think he's a top 20 player because he can dribble and has become a better shooter and just has really interesting measurables and has a nice polished floater game and all that. Jang just even compared to Jovic and Miller, who again, these are all 6'10", 190 to 210 guys. They're all thin. Right. Jang just has no balance. He's baby deer game, and I don't like that. But I think his defense is probably the most if you see him in a workout, it's easiest to project him to being a decent defender. Where the other two guys are have weirder bodies or don't have when they get in a stance, they don't. Jang looks really impressive in a stance. He can cover a lot of ground. He can kind of look like Thabo out there. That's a guy just gets way out. Because Thabo could uncork himself and then like a snake, and suddenly he'd look like he was a 7-footer, and he'd really get you.
Oh, for sure. And Jeng seems to be the guy. It's still a little bit early for this, but like he seems to be the guy who is the top one of these on most of the mainstream boards. Like he might be, he seems to be like a late lottery guy for some people, which I'm not like surprised by. I've seen him play now 3 times. It was twice recently. I watched him another play. One game he looked just brutal to me, and I couldn't understand it. And then I was like, all right, I get it now.
He had some pretty steady improvement from the games I saw him in the NBL.
Yeah.
And the NBL, I think, it's been proven to be like a pretty, especially physically. I said this every year now. It's a pretty physical league. Like there's a lot of 30, 35-year-old men in that league, and they're not letting you get
adults. Yeah.
They're not just gonna let you get to the rim. So like if you can get to the rim at all in the NBL, you're tough. You may not be fast, you may not be the strongest guy, but you can take some hits. And I think that really matured him up. Really, like he grew up a lot as a player. And I think there's something there. I'm just not like, I wouldn't say I'm a huge fan. It's just like prior perception stuff, just like movement stuff. It just doesn't have he doesn't have a lot of bend. He's just kind of upright. He kind of runs around like an action figure and gets bumped. But that can work for some guys. Some guys just have weirder, I mean, if you were to go off of that criteria, Michael Beasley would be a superstar because Michael Beasley could move like crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Miller, I think, though, if I have to give him a comp, because Jang, I think the comp is that there's that one comp, but there's been a bunch of who was it I saw for him? You might have seen it. Sorry, I should have looked this up.
It's okay.
I knew you were going to ask me about Jang. Because there was somebody I saw him comp to that I thought was decent.
I haven't really heard one, honestly, that I've.
Kyle Anderson.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
But I think he's just too goofy. He's still even goofier than that. Miller, for me, I think the comp is, and this is not going to really endear him more familiar, but he kind of looks like Jonathan Bender to me. The thing is, Jonathan Bender was supremely talented and got hurt, and then the Pacers gave up on him.
Well, and Bender was supposed to be a premium shooter as well, coming out, which, it's a long time ago now. I'm sure people that are younger are like, who's Jonathan Bender, which is sad. But I'm with you on Jonathan Bender. That makes a lot of sense. No, those guys are just unless you're
gambles. They'll be gambles because there's a chance all three of them flame out.
And in general, unless it's a top 5 guy, people are not going to take the time to watch the guys that they can't watch in college. It's just what it is. So I get it, and I've seen those guys less than others for sure. That's part of the problem, and I will definitely freely admit that. So I want to get your thoughts. Today's show is brought to you by Arcade 1UP, and they have big news. The one and only NBA Jam is back. Arcade 1UP is the leader in at-home retro arcade games. They're not only bringing back the best game ever, but they're making it bigger and better than ever with, wait for it, a Shaq Edition machine. I've been a big NBA Jam guy for a long, long time. This is fantastic news for those of us in my demographic and really anybody that likes NBA Jam. I'm not the only one that's obsessed with it. I know that. And I've told it to all of our listeners that you can once again play hoops with NBA legends in this arcade classic. Jump clear across the court and set the ball on fire. One of the first sports games ever to feature real digitized NBA licensed teams. No fouls, no free throws, and no quarters required. Keep with your friends and family through the all-new Wi-Fi leaderboards, making you more connected than ever. You can pre-order now at arcade1up.com. That is arcade, the number 1, up.com for an estimated early September ship date. Arcade 1UP is the place for fun. They had classics like Golden Tee, Mortal Kombat, and many others starting at $3.99. Check this out right now. Today, they're giving away a free NBA Jam Shaq Edition to a Locked On listener. Enter for a chance to win a game console for your man cave at arcade1up.com/lockedon. That is arcade, the number 1, up.com/lockedon. You have until July 8th to enter to win that NBA Jam Shaq Edition console. Don't miss out. Enter today at arcade1up.com/lockedon. I have one more sort of grouping of 3 guys I want to ask you about. They're not identical, but they're kind of similar size guys, and they're kind of in the Hawks range. A little bit different, though. Malachi Branham, Bryce McGowens, and Jalen Williams. These 6'5" to 6'6" shooting guard size guys who have some strengths, have some weaknesses.
If you're ranking them on how good they could be, that's the order: Branham,
McGowens, Williams. Okay.
Williams. If you're ranking them on who will be the most likely to help the Hawks next year, it's Jalen Williams easily.
Well, and he's the guy who, just people don't know, he obviously was a little bit off the radar coming, unless you were college basketball, not like we are, from Santa Clara, but he seems to be all kinds of rising up the boards to a top 20-ish marking now, whereas maybe 2 months ago it was maybe he'll be a top 40 guy. He's a nice sleeper, and now he's 17 on the board. So it's come a long way.
He can pass. That's the thing. Jalen Williams is an
Yeah.
excellent passer. Has a lot of fearlessness as a passer, which I'm sure Hawks fans are familiar with. But he goes for a lot of real tight window bounce passes, real close handoffs, a lot of real passes that require a lot of timing, and just like they're not passes you just dribble into and hand off. Like I don't want to single out Westbrook because he has some passes, but Westbrook used to get a lot of it. A lot of his assists when he was in his triple double days were just like dribble into the paint, move her out of the way, give the ball to Steven Adams right next to me, he'll dunk.
Yeah.
And like nothing wrong with that. Like it's still a dunk. That's good. That's 2 points. You manufacture something for your teammate. But like Jalen Williams has a lot more like actual craft passes that I think are really interesting. I think he's a shooter. Probably a spot up shooter. I think he was like 46% on spot ups, which is nice.
That's
And he could shoot, and he could take a couple dribbles and shoot. He's a real good bet to be a secondary guy, especially early on, like a bench guy. I'm trying to think of who he really reminds me of. There's been a run of like smaller school 6'6" guys who haven't worked out, like the Wesawundu types.
And even Wesawundu was like actually was a guy that was on the Hawks for a minute this last year during the COVID madness. But like he's a good athlete. Like the thing about Williams is that he's super long. He's got a 7'2" wingspan, I think,
7'2".
something like that. But like he's not a good athlete for an NBA wing.
But he's not an explosive athlete.
Yeah, he's fluid.
He's big. He's 215, 220. He's broad. He handles contact really well. He's very long. He understands already how to get to his spots without being like. He's heavy footed. That's the best way to describe him. He's kind of he can plod around a little bit. That kind of guy is a good bet to still work because he knows what he's doing already. He knows how to get to the spots. And I think he's legitimately really good. I'd like him at 18. Like I think he's a legitimate, like at least like a guy off the bench to run some offense and really.
And by the way, just for Hawks, for people to reference thing, Brian's a Bulls fan, so he keeps saying that number 18 overall pick. I want people to understand why he's saying that. Brian's a Bulls
fan. McGowan's is kind of the opposite bet, where like he's so thin, but he just has like kind of like Wesley, just has the flashes of like real legitimate like driving into the paint, finishing. He can shoot. I think if he works out, he's going to be more like Dinwiddie, where it's just like this guy's too tall and has too many guard skills to be bad, but he's going to have his bad games. And I think especially as a rookie, he'll have a lot of games where he looks completely overwhelmed.
He's not a guy that's going to help you right away, I don't think. And also, you'll appreciate this too. Like the observation of him is hard because he's playing at Nebraska in kind of a weird situation where his teammates are not good. It's a bad team, but this is a guy like you might be thinking because he went to Nebraska that he wasn't like, but he was supposed to be like, he was a big time prospect coming out too. It was like, this is a weird breakout guy.
Brother transferred there. Yeah.
That's the whole thing. So, I mean, I'm sure if people don't know anything about this, it's like, why is this guy in Nebraska playing basketball as like a fringe 5-star? Like it's because he got to Nebraska. Like it was like, it wasn't. He's not a Blake Wesley guy who broke out of nowhere. Like he was supposed to be.
No, he was a guy. Yeah, he was like a shoe circuit guy. It's like last year I got people asking me like, Cade and Mobley really ruined their draft stock by playing at these terrible basketball schools, and it's like, well, Cade's brother was a coach at Oklahoma State, and Evan Mobley's dad is a coach at USC, and his brother played there. Like, yeah, they're going there.
Well, and also those are not quite Nebraska. You know what I mean? Like those are a little bit better than Nebraska.
Oklahoma State, I'm not sure. Nah, I don't know.
I mean, a lot of that was because K was really good, obviously. But
they're not trying
historically speaking, that's not a terrible program in the way that Nebraska has been forever, basically. But no,
at least,
I didn't mean to derail you, but I think that was it's just worth pointing out. Like he was actually supposed to be a big time prospect. I think he's he's almost 20. I think he's a little bit older than a one and done. A lot of those guys are, but
slightly. Within 6 months, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it is. I'm not saying it's a huge problem, but no, he is interesting. He didn't shoot well from 3 this year at all.
I think almost all of his threes were self-created, though. Like that's really what it was.
And that's again part of the evaluation of just watching him in Nebraska and all that stuff too, because like a lot of pressure on him for sure.
Yeah. He had to handle a crazy load there, and still managed to have a lot of real flash. He covers a lot of ground. I think there's something with McGowan's, and then Branham, I think, just could be like a legit like lights out shooter.
Yeah,
like he could be the Buddy Hield, like just a monster shooter. He has all the indicators for statistically, lots of contested long twos, good foul shooter, 44% 3-point shooter. So like he should shoot.
That's good.
He's got good wingspan. The thing with Branham is he is so far behind. Even unless he's going to be like a number one option, he's so far behind that he does not play defense like at all.
None. It's
He's
bad.
a terrible defender.
Yeah.
Even by college freshman in the Big Ten standards, he was like dire. He was really bad.
No, I noticed that too. Our mutual friend Sam Vecini is an Ohio State grad, and he's like, I watch a lot of Ohio State, and Malachi Branham is a terrible defender, and it's like he really is. Like I feel bad because you don't want to say that, but it really is. Like it was stark how bad it was, and also not to bring this point home too much, but he also was a guy who wasn't supposed to be a one and done.
Not really, no. He was kind of a under the radar, slightly under the radar guy.
And even during the season, and even during the draft cycle, he went from like, okay, maybe this guy is a late first rounder to like lots of lottery projections in the last couple of months, and he might be gone by 16. Like we don't know.
But he's that is a signifier that he has been crushing workouts.
Yeah, he's been a rise.
Way to rise.
Well, and you're not going to imagine this if you watched him play. He's going to look really good in a workout as a shooter in particular, which is going to be starking. And I mean, defensively, that's not as big of a. It's not going to kill you in a workout the way other things will.
No, I think he's a top 5 shooter in the class. So like,
I buy that. I mean, do you think obviously the defense is what it is, but is part of that he's not a great athlete because he doesn't seem like the best athlete.
The real concern is that he's not a very good athlete and he already has long arms. Like a lot of those guys, if a guy's a really bad college defender, you're like, well, he doesn't have the length. He can't really adjust. This guy's got the length and he's still bad.
Well, he's also a 2. Like he's not small forward sized. He's like 6.
No, I think he could switch into it a little bit.
Maybe, yeah. If he gets a little bit stronger, and I don't know,
you're gonna have to hide him. You're gonna have to hide him on defense.
I was gonna say that's in particular for Atlanta. Is not what
we're talking like sub rookie Levine, like sub. Who's like a bad defender? I can't even think now of like really truly bad defenders.
I mean Levine early on was terrible.
So awful.
And I will say though, in a point of encouragement, Levine's a much better athlete, but he's come a long way defensively. Like you can improve. Like he's not going to be a game changer, but there's a way for Bram to be okay.
You can just figure out what you're doing. Yeah, he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't try, and he's got like poor tools.
But the thing is, for the Hawks, like it's really, really hard for them to have a starter on the team next to Trey that's a bad defender on the wing. That's tough. Like if it's your 6 man like spark plug offensive guy, that can work. But if he's your 33 minute a game starting shooting guard next to Trey,
that's kind of who
you can't be bad. Yeah.
Because Bogdan's already bad enough.
Current Bogey's not a good defender. I think Herter's underrated, but Bogey's fallen off a lot last couple of years. And that kind of tells you the Hawks have said this too. I think they kind of know that internally, and they don't want to have that repeat itself. And Brandon might be that. So that's one of the. If you're looking for a negative, that's definitely the one. Okay.
Yeah, Williams and Eason of like if I really like Jalen Williams as I think he should go in the teens or the early 20s at the latest. Because really the only concern is that he's just kind of slow-footed and like if that's your major concern, those guys make it.
Well, yeah, and maybe
Jones made it. Kyle Anderson made it. Like,
yeah, he did. And I mean, maybe you could say that like he kind of came out of nowhere, which can be a little bit of a frightening thing as a shooter in particular. But like in Santa Clara, I think the WCC is underrated. Like it's
a good conference.
It's not a bad conference, but it's still. It's still Santa Clara, and you're not playing Gonzaga every night. So some of that stuff as well. So I like him too. I think we covered all the guys that I wanted to get to on this sort of tier. Then I have one more question before I've taken up a lot of your time. There's this group of guys who we think will probably be gone by the time the Hawks pick, whether it's Dyson Daniels or Jeremy Sohan or Johnny Davis, Ben Mathurin. I'm trying to think of anybody else that I haven't mentioned. Those are probably the guys for me that are probably going to be gone, but might not be because I've been saying this a lot. So Hawks fans, forgive me. But like the Hawks have had a couple of good fortune guys fall to them in the last 5 years. Collins was one that fell to them unexpectedly. Jalen Johnson fell to them unexpectedly. So my radar is just kind of up for a guy or two that might just slip to 16 out of nowhere. Do you have one of those guys that you would like for Atlanta in particular? Like that would be maybe even a trade-up candidate for the Hawks?
Yeah, so I don't think he's going to slip, unfortunately. I don't think he's going to make it out of like the top 7. But if Dyson gets to 10, they should.
I love him.
Dyson is like a perfect fit. Yeah. Dyson basically is. So there's a Lonzo comparison, and I understand it completely. He's almost the same size. Actually, he's probably taller now. He's 200 pounds already.
I saw a report today that he's like 6'8" or something.
I think he is 6'8". Yeah.
Woo. All right. Anyway,
shot blocker guard, rebounder guard, hit ahead passer, connector kind of guard. I think the better comparison for him though is Caruso. But if Caruso was 6'8" and like well behind that ball, like as a ball handler, like
but
not
6'8"
even
Caruso would be a heck of a player.
he's a 1-4 defender. I feel like pretty reasonable. He will be that. He's a smart passer, not flashy, but he just makes a lot of intelligent passes, quick dump offs. He's great. The thing he's really great at, and I think the reason his assist numbers are so high, he has point guard mentality, which means he understands the second pass, where the second pass is going to be, where the third pass is going to be. So if he's in the corner and he's waiting for a pass, if the shot is not there, he knows where he's going. And sometimes that can get you in trouble. Like Lonzo has some turnovers where he predetermines a pass and throws it. But that's what Lonzo is so good at with the Bulls. Is right. Like if he's the second pass, that third pass is going to be either an open three or a dunk. Like that's just how it is. Dyson's that kind of passer. Is a connector passer is what we call it. Dyson's great. I don't think he's going to make it there. I think Johnny Davis would be a pretty reasonable pick because I think he proved he can handle the ball. I don't know if he's like this is going to sound weird. He's not a ball handler. He's not a guy I don't think you want to design like possessions for. Yeah. But he's the guy who, if the ball finds its way to him and he needs to get into the paint, he can do that.
No, and the thing is, like, I think his usage rate was like in the mid-30s or something. Like, he does not need to be that. Like at Wisconsin, it made sense for him to be that, and that's how he became like a National Player of the Year candidate. But he's not going to be that in the NBA.
He's super tough. He's a fearless finisher. He's a good defender. Gets a lot of rebounds. I mean, the comp. It's a comp that some people aren't going to like because some people, myself included, don't like this player. But it's a player that has value. It's a Dillon Brooks type.
Or Dylan. What I would say is Dillon Brooks, but like understands what he can and can't do better than Dillon Brooks.
Yeah, maybe we'll see.
But you know what I mean though. Like, I think that there is a reasonable expectation that because obviously Dillon Brooks has value as a player. He is very maddening if you watch him play offense. But imagine if Dillon Brooks had all the same skills, but better shot selection. Yeah. Everyone would love Dillon Brooks. You know what I mean? Like that's a heck of a player. If you just sort of fit. And even with all of his craziness, he's still a pretty good player.
Johnny, I think I can easily see Johnny being the fifth starter for a long time for a lot of different teams.
He fits well with the Hawks too. Like,
maybe he has like a Wes Matthews carew, just he's around all the time. That's the thing. There's a lot of guys in this draft who are between 6'5" and 6'8", and they're just gonna stick around because they have 2 or 3 skills. And Johnny's got 2 or 3 skills. No, I'm not in love with him, but I think it's very easy to see him. I mean, I have him at 16, so
I think that,
anyway.
Well, to bring it back to the beginning of the conversation before we get out of here, like I am not a big trade up guy in this draft. I'm not a big like for instance, there's this whole thing that we won't go down about like John Collins for 7 rumors, for instance. I wouldn't want to be in the 7 to 12 range in this class for the most part.
I would do that.
I don't love it.
If I was the Hawks, I would do that if AJ was there.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that. Now,
if AJ was there.
Yeah, and even
or for some reason Jaden Ivey is there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I probably still wouldn't, but I do think that Griffin would be the guy that I would want if I was going to do that. But regardless, what I'm saying is like there's this movement, particularly for a guy like if you fall in love with someone like Johnny Davis or whoever you want to say it is.
Don't trade up for Johnny Davis.
Yeah. I mean, that guy, or even Dyson, as much as I love him, that's not really the profile of player that you want to trade up for. He's a role player.
Yeah, I would trade up to 12 or 13 for him. I could 2 or 3 spots. I mean,
it's not at a reasonable price. At a reasonable price, it doesn't. I don't hate it. I just wouldn't want to like really mortgage assets to move up in this draft. And that kind of about how flat it is.
I would if I was the New York Knicks and Jaden Ivey was on.
Sure. I mean, no, and the way that I would put it, and I'm not even.
That's the only guy. That's the guy. That Ivey's the only guy.
Yeah, and you're higher on Ivey than I am. But even then, like I understand that because if you're going to do what it has to be done to get up that high, it better be a star swing. And I think Ivey is a star swing. Like if he whether he's that or not.
I have Ivy as high as you can possibly have.
I know you do. That's why, and we can do a whole podcast on the top of the draft that we won't do today. But no,
it's a first among equals situation. That's how I'm describing it. I kind of have them all in the same spot, and my personal methodology has just been give the nudge to the guy who will have the ball more.
That's and I get that. Yeah. I really do.
That's why I had Caleb Mobley.
Right. And if you evaluate Ivy as on the same level as those other guys, like it does make sense kind of to do that. And if you want to push in your chips for, if you're a team, obviously the Hawks are a little bit different spot because they already have Trey, but even then, maybe they view him as a great Trey compliment. You want to go crazy or whatever. But
incredible Trey compliment.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense too. Like I think Ivy's probably better as a number 2. That's my personal opinion. And with Trey, that's what he would be.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he's gonna be a star, he's gonna be a 1. But yeah,
I agree, I agree. And I really mean like number 2 in terms of like option on your team more than anything else.
Yeah,
because there's this whole road we could go down about like what actually he projects to be, but in Atlanta, it very obviously would be he would have to start at the 2, and he'd probably be your 1 when Trey was off the floor and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, my starting point there,
which is a player they've needed for a long time.
Agreed. And if you want to, my general philosophy is if you want to trade up, at least substantially up for a guy, he better have star upside. That's what I think at the top of the draft. If you're trading for role players, it doesn't always end well. See Hunter DeAndre, who I still believe in, but you don't want to trade 4 assets for a guy who's going to be a role player. That's just not it's not a great use of.
Especially one of those assets is Jackson Hayes.
You love Jackson Hayes.
He's great, man. I mean, I don't know about him personally at this point, but he's just one of the most interesting basketball players to watch. He does weird stuff.
He is very interesting.
It doesn't look normal what he does.
No. Well, Brian, I've kept you forever. If you have anything else to add, please feel free. If not, please plug yourself. You're always doing stuff. I know I can count on you always to have watched everyone that I ask you about, which I always appreciate.
There's my Twitter. I'm still doing Patreon stuff. I'm gonna put out. Well, by the time this comes out, I imagine I'm gonna put out my board is going to be free for everyone this week. I'm really just waiting until the 13th to see if anyone else withdraws because that's technically the withdrawal date.
That's right.
I don't want to make it public and then have to erase. Last year,
it's not the college date, which is the college date's already passed. People are wondering, but you still have guys that could go. You can go to Ignite, for instance. We talked about Leonard Miller earlier. He has to come out if he wants to come out. But the college date is already passed, so most of the guys are not going to be pulling out at this point. Internationally, etc. So,
but that'll still give people 10 days to.
Yeah, and I will just say, obviously,
I will post it. It will be my pinned tweet, so it'll be easy to find.
I enjoy your work enough to have you on the podcast, but also I am a patron of yours, and I will definitely cape for it. It's great information that Brian has. He's always firing stuff away. He's got details and things that you can't always find. So I would recommend that at the highest level and follow Brian and all that fun stuff. Thank you for all the time, my friend. I appreciate it. As for everybody else, please subscribe to the podcast. One more time, check out Brian's Patreon, Twitter, etc. And we'll see you all next time.